Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to tackle something huge, decoding the law. We're diving into how courts figure out what the rules really mean when the words on the page aren't quite as simple as they look. All right, let's kick things off with a little puzzle. Imagine you see this sign at a park entrance. Seems pretty straightforward, right? No vehicles. But as you're about to see, a simple phrase like this opens up a massive challenge that sits right at the heart of the legal world. Okay, first up, a car. Yeah, that's pretty obviously a vehicle, right? I think we can all agree on that one. No car is allowed. Simple. But what about a skateboard? Some kid zips by on one. Is that a vehicle according to this rule? See, it's already getting a little fuzzy. And then you hear a siren. An ambulance needs to race into the park to help someone. Now, surely that has to be okay, doesn't it? But the sign, it just says, no vehicles, period. And this is exactly why we need a system for this stuff. Right. So that ambiguity, that's the whole reason courts can't just be dictionaries. They need a special toolkit, especially when they're dealing with the formal, written laws that we call statutes.
So here's the official, kind of wordy definition. But really, all a statute is the official rulebook written and passed by a government body, like Parliament or Congress. And these rulebooks come in all flavors, You've got penal statutes for crimes, super complex taxing statutes, and each one needs to be read a little differently.
So, when the words in that rule book get murky, a court's job isn't just to look them up. They have to play detective and figure out what the lawmakers were actually trying to do. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it raises a huge question. When a judge has to decide what a law meant to say, who really has the final word? The people who wrote it or the people who interpret it?
Yeah, just like the legal thinker Solomon said, it's all about digging for the legislature's original intent, using the words they wrote down as your treasure map.
Okay, this is important. People use these two words, interpretation and construction, almost interchangeably, but there's a subtle difference. Interpretation is just figuring out what the word vehicle literally means. But construction? That's a bigger step. That's about looking at the purpose of the law, to keep the park safe, and drawing the conclusion that an ambulance isn't the kind of vehicle the rule was ever meant to ban. It's about the law's overall effect. So to figure all this out, judges basically put on their detective hats. And the first rule of detective work? You look for clues at the scene of the crime. Or in this case, clues hidden right inside the law itself. We call these internal aids. And these internal aids are super useful. The long title, for example, is like the law's mission statement. The preamble tells you what it hopes to achieve. And that's just the start. Judges will look at everything, schedules, special clauses, even where the commas are, to get the full picture.
So here's what this can actually look like in a real legal document. I know, it looks dense, but you can see how a section right at the top, like that preamble, basically acts like an instruction manual for the whole law. It sets the stage for everything else.
Okay, but what happens when even those internal clues don't give you a clear answer? What then? Well, that's when judges pull out their master toolkit, a set of core principles known as the primary rules of interpretation. And it's a really logical step-by-step process. You always start with step 1, the literal rule. Just what do the words actually say in their plain, ordinary meaning? But if that leads to a totally crazy result, like, say, arresting an ambulance driver, you move to step 2, the golden rule. You tweak the meaning just enough to avoid that absurd outcome. And finally, you've got the big one, the mischief rule. This is where you ask, what problem was this law even trying to fix in the first place? All right, we've got our rules, we've got our toolkit. Let's go back to that sign in the park and solve this thing for good. So, let's apply that mischief rule. What was the mischief, the problem, that the no vehicle sign was trying to prevent? Well, it was almost certainly about the noise, the pollution, the danger of fast-moving cars and motorcycles. The intent was never to stop a kid on a skateboard or block an ambulance from saving a life. See? The context, the purpose, it changes everything. And all of this brings us back to a really deep and fascinating question to leave you with. What we're seeing here is this constant dance between the people who write the laws and the judges who give those words their ultimate meaning. So it really makes you wonder, who holds the real power? The writer or the reader? It's a question that gets to the very heart of how justice actually works.